Senate File 37, sales tax exemptions, certify eligibility. And then as we left it, Ms. Johnson was going to develop an amendment based upon some recommendations that we didn't want this requirement to apply to every single exemption that's out there, which is things like high school yearbooks, maybe ski lift tickets, on and on. So Ms. Johnson, we've got copies coming. One here for public. Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tammy Johnson. I'm the Executive Director for Wyoming State AFL-CIO. I brought to you today the requested amendment. I worked with Terry from the Department of Revenue. She was very helpful. And I think what we've come up with is what I had originally discussed when we brought this forward in, I want to say, October in Casper. The three portions of the amendment are all very similar. They address industries that are significant and that are large and that receive the manufacturing, sales and use tax. It wasn't the exemptions for everything, just the larger industries that do significant amount of hiring in the state. And I'm going to try to pull up the statute if you want to know what those letters refer to.
That'd be good.
Sorry, I wasn't really prepared to do this part of it, but. No internet. Imagine that. Anyway, I can't do that, I guess, because I don't have internet. So
Maybe Ms. Lucero, she's got the book. Ms. Lucero.
here's the book.
Thank you,
Okay,
Ms.
so
Lucero.
thank you. The exemptions would be the to certify for the exemption, it would include the sale or lease of machinery to be used in the state directly and predominantly in manufacturing, tangible personal property. That's O. R is the sale of equipment used to construct a new coal gasification or coal liquefaction facility. Say that 3 times fast. S is subject to meeting the applicable data processing services centers as described in 39-15-101. So that would include the sales price paid for the purchase or rental of qualifying pre-written other computer software, computer equipment, computer servers, monitors, keyboards, storage devices, containers used to transport and house such computer equipment. The sales price paid for the and et cetera. There's a lot of things listed there. The sales price paid for the purchase or rental of qualifying uninterruptible power supplies, backup generators, specialized heating and air conditioning equipment. So what it takes to run a data center, and then U is sales of equipment to a telecommunications service provider, video programming service provider, or provider of internet access. So that's amendment 1.
Okay.
Amendment 2, starting on line 9, page 2, before receiving the exemption under any of these, or under 39-105, 39-16-105. Let me go there. Oh, same. DGH or K. D is, oh no.
So I think, Ms. Johnson,
I think that's it.
you're following
Yeah.
these are the same exemptions written in 2 sections of the statute, because
Right.
one deals with sales tax and one deals with use tax. We don't have to go through it twice.
Okay, so that's the upshot of it. It's going after some of the bigger sales tax exemptions, which are big money for the state. I don't have a dollar amount. I don't know if there's a way to predict that or to plan that, but You know what the crux of this bill is, in addition to generating revenue for the state via collecting these taxes, if we do, that other industries pay and other people pay, we would be generating the income that comes to communities when workers live and work in that community. And that's as an economic development catalyst, that is critical to our state. I would propose to you that I think it's a lot of heartburn in the state that we don't have a workforce when we have a boom coming in projects and work. If you work in the industry I work in, you see these projects coming and the sweat is about, we don't have workers. Well, when we continue to not do things to develop our workforce, we don't have the workers. It's a vicious cycle. And so we need to take some baby steps to develop a workforce. And this is one of those ways. When we say to the big players in the state, come on, hire some Wyoming workers. And there's an incentive for you to do it. And it's this manufacturing sales and use tax break. Just being here and not hiring Wyoming workers doesn't do for the economy of the state what it does when you hire Wyoming workers. And therefore an exemption is warranted. But if you're not going to hire Wyoming workers, or at least make an effort to, and that's all this bill asks, is that you make an effort to hire Wyoming workers. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any questions for Ms. Johnson on the amendment? So we'll set the amendment aside just for a little bit
Okay.
and get asked if there's public testimony. There's some folks here that weren't here for the bill, so we'll give them the chance, and then also on the amendment. So is that all right?
I think so, Mr. Chairman. I thought you closed public testimony last time, but maybe you didn't.
I get to do what I want.
You get to do whatever you
Yeah.
want, whenever you
So
want.
there are some folks here that weren't here last time. Would anybody like to address us on the bill and the amendment? Anybody like to address us on the bill and the amendment? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, ma'am. Is your light on? Do you mind calling me chairman?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you for this time and this opportunity to testify. And thank you to all the senators. My name is Betsy Hale. I'm the CEO of Cheyenne Leads, and it's an honor to be able to share with you some of our most current situation here in Laramie County. Our labor force since 2020 has dropped from 51,000 to 49,000. Currently, we have an unemployment rate of 3.3% in the economic development world. That is full employment. Today, we have 7,800 workers that drive into Laramie County from Larimer and Weld County, Colorado. Over half of those work at F.E. Warren Air Force Base. We are also looking at the fact that this may create additional regulation or regulatory requirements that companies cannot, they look to Wyoming to be business friendly and not always have the regulations they might find other places. I did want to share anecdotally that I have been visited by union representatives from the sheet metal workers recently to thank Wyoming for what's going on in Wyoming, because their members down in Colorado and up in Montana are coming to Wyoming for work. So I think what we've got to do is maybe coordinate a little better, or find the workforce or retrain the workforce that these facilities, particularly the data centers, need. And I also wanted to let you know, as I know I talked to Senator James a couple times, we had a good call yesterday with HollyFrontier. They have been hiring the displaced workers back. And they have also asked me to start looking for growers of soybeans and canola in Wyoming, because they're currently bringing those in from Kansas and Nebraska. So just a little bit of an update there for you, Senator. And thank you. And I'm happy to stand for questions.
Any questions for Ms. Hale? Thank you, Ms. Hale. Who's next? Mr. Detai?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Travis Detai with the Wyoming Mining Association. I will be brief. My membership consists on my mining company side of 30 member companies, mining coal, trona, uranium, bentonite, lignite. We have companies exploring for rare earth and gold. My membership has directed me to oppose this bill. And then the bottom line is my member companies are already doing everything they can to hire Wyoming workers. The implication of this is that they're not. This would add just another layer of regulatory red tape to certify in order to take advantage of the exemptions that some, but not all of my members take advantage of. And to what end? Are we to prepare for someone to come back and say, show us your certificate that you're doing everything you can, and if not, you don't get your exemption? We feel this is simply unnecessary. And we would ask the committee to vote no on this, and let's put this to bed. Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Questions by the committee for Mr. Detail? Any questions? Anybody? Mr. Detail, how hard do you think it is to sign a piece of paper that says that you to hire Wyoming workers to the extent practical? Is that kind of a true
Mr. Chairman,
statement?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think the effort is hard at all. It's the implication that you're doing something wrong by not going out and trying to hire Wyoming workers. And we are. And in fact, right now, we've got many companies that are just trying to hire workers, that are just trying to hire employees. And, given the state of the country and trying to get people to go to work, that's where we're at right now. There's nothing nefarious about hiring, for instance, a bentonite operation that operates in the northeast corner of the state that has many workers that live in South Dakota or Montana. But that company is paying taxes in Wyoming. That company is doing everything right in Wyoming. And to do this, it's simply unnecessary, I think, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Detail. Anybody else? Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Detail. So I'm just curious if you could tell us if you see anywhere where it describes how one would verify that you look for Wyoming workers instead of workers elsewhere first. I was just wondering if you saw that anywhere.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Detail.
Senator James, I think that's a really good question. Would a company need to develop a plan to show that to defend their affidavit that they're hiring Wyoming workers? Again, more paperwork. What are they going to do to back it up? So again, I think we're already doing everything that we need to do to hire Wyoming workers when they're available. And if someone lives in South Dakota and is doing that job in Colony, we need workers to get the job done to produce the mineral.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Detail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Who's next? Ms. Levin. And the young fellow you're with. Hi, Mr. Rude.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jody Levin with the Trona Industry, and with me is Mr. Craig Root with Jenner. I apologize for not being here on Tuesday. I had a conflicting hearing, but this is something I've followed through the interim, as the Trona Industry is one of the largest recipients of the manufacturing exemption. The operators have started to ask me questions that I can't answer about this bill, and the language doesn't provide clarity. So I'm here today to pose a couple of questions with the hope that the committee can either answer those or the department. At the outset, I want to say that the Trona Industry has a very strong ethic and track record on supporting local. They hire as many local workers as they can. As you've already heard, there aren't enough workers to go around. So they've been working both with Western Wyoming Community College and the University of Wyoming on curriculum. They've helped invest in those programs to try to produce as many graduates as they can to hire into their operations. Mr. Chairman, I would agree with Mr. Detail. It's pretty simple to sign a piece of paper. The question comes more on what happens when you can't find these workers. Southwest Wyoming is already experiencing a boom, and it's going to experience a greater boom. You've got 2 of the Trona operations with expansion projects. You've got 3 other industrial companies with major expansions going on. So it's going to be difficult to find workers. And the question comes at signing a piece of paper. What happens when a challenge comes? If an entity believes that they could have done the work and they weren't given the opportunity, who decides that the company was in the wrong? That's one of the major questions. I think the Trona industry has no qualms with certifying that they do everything possible to hire local workers. The other question comes on what happens in the instance if those workers are, or the company that you end up contracting with to install a piece of equipment is substantially more expensive than a contractor that you typically use. I can't answer that question. The bill doesn't answer that. So I don't know what happens in that instance. I guess in that instance, you didn't do everything possible to hire the Wyoming worker because the entity was more expensive. I don't think it would ever negate the full impact of the exemption. I mean, this is extremely expensive equipment. But these are questions that the operators are asking me, and as I said, I just don't know how to answer them. Mr. Root is here if you have any questions about what it's like to try to hire and their experience. But that's my testimony, Mr. Chairman.
So Ms. Levin, you use the term possible. The bill doesn't use possible. It says practical. Did you
Right.
mean to use possible?
No,
You said do everything possible to hire workers. The bill says practical. I think there's a difference.
Mr. Chairman, I think I did say possible, and you are correct. It does say practicable. Again, Mr. Chairman, who decides?
Well, I probably won't decide. Any questions for the committee? For Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, I guess, maybe for Mr. Rood. Since the Trona mines are over in my neck of the woods, what do you find in terms of the biggest issue with workers? Is it specialty areas? Is it administration? Is it boots on the ground, guys that can do, weld and do computers? I mean, I'm just kind of interested in knowing what are our biggest issues in terms of workforce.
Sure.
Go ahead and you could give a little introduction about
Okay.
yourself if you want.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler, my name's Craig Rood. I've been with Jenner this is my 30th year, so I've been in the Trona industry a long time. The labor market has become really challenging just in general. I would say, to answer your question, Senator Schuler, the specialty areas, like we'll have specialty equipment that we have to bring people into work for, and while there may be companies in Wyoming that could do that, as Ms. Levin said, they installed the piece of equipment, whether it's a big kiln or the refractory in the kiln, and we have to bring people in from out of state for that. And then the other area we do struggle with is professional folks of hiring within Wyoming, the engineers and HR folks, and that's even become more challenging with COVID and people working from home. HR folks don't want to come out to a plant anymore. They want to work from home. So we just went through actually hiring one, and it was very difficult. And he came from Utah. So,
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. You notice any difference since the community college in Rock Springs is ramping up their training with heavy equipment, diesel mechanics, et cetera, geared towards your industry in particular? Do you notice any difference? Are we getting a little bit less of a need, or do you notice any difference at all since we've ramped that up?
Mr. Root.
so Mr. Chairman, Senator Baldwin, yeah, we've got more qualified, trained workers, and Western Wyoming's been wonderful to work for. We've been hand in hand developing those programs. We just started up one for operators, which we did not have in the past, and I think the first 3 classes of 20 have all been hired right into the Trona industry. So it's definitely helped. And I think, overall, I would just say we're struggling with the population issue. We pay a good wage, so we don't have trouble attracting entry level, but it's just population issue.
Anybody else? Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you allowing us to testify.
Bet. Who else would like to testify? Anybody else? Anybody online?
Mr. Chairman, there's no one online at this
Okay.
point.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, did you want a rebuttal? Keep it short.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tammy Johnson, AFL-CIO. This is all good news because I just heard our employers say that they're hiring Wyoming workers. And so to sign a piece of paper is not much to do. And I'm just happy to hear that. And again, the word practical plays a big part in this bill because certainly if you're installing a piece of equipment that's specialized, it's not practicable to hire people who don't know how to do it. So you wouldn't get in trouble for that, or you wouldn't lose your exemption. So yeah, it's good news. I'm glad they're all hiring Wyoming workers, and it wouldn't be a problem to sign a piece of papers.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
You bet.
Anything from the committee? Okay, everybody, testimony is closed, and let's just see what your pleasure is. What's pleasure on the bill? Got a motion? Got a motion from Baldwin. Discussion? Would anyone like to offer the amendment? Would anyone like to offer the amendment? Sure. Senator Baldwin's offering the amendment. So everybody, this amendment limits it. We might, Ms. Lucero, would you mind just overview of the amendment? Am I getting you off guard since you wrote it, basically? As I understood it, it was the amendment limits it to machinery, equipment, data processing, auxiliary power units, but I throw it to you. Welcome, Ms. Lucero.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Terry Lucero, Excise Tax Administrator for the Department of Revenue. So the suggested amendment covers the manufacturing machinery exemption.
Mhm.
It covers the coal gasification, so the materials to build a coal gasification liquefaction plant, which we have not had.
Right.
It also covers the data center, so that covers all their computer equipment as well as the uninterruptible power if they meet certain criteria. And it also covers the broadband exemption that passed just a couple years ago.
Very good. Any questions on the amendment? Thank you, Ms. Lucero.
Thank
Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the amendment is passed. Back on the bill. Any discussion on the bill? Any discussion? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of struggle with this bill a little bit. Because I see the need for it. I see the idea behind it. I see the impetus behind it. I understand it. But at the same time, I'm a little nervous about some of the questions that were raised today and even the other day about how do we basically come back and find out whether or not a company has done their due diligence with this. I don't really like to vote towards anything that really increases a lot of government layers and oversight if we can help it. And I think that's the thing that kind of gets me right now is that I feel like maybe it's just a layer of oversight that we don't need, even though I think the intent is very good. And so I'll probably be a no vote on it.
Okay, anybody else? Senator Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Like Senator Schuler, I guess I'm wondering several things on the bill, actually. And my question is, I think we may be creating something that we don't have any means of really enforcing or really looking at it. That's my fear, is that we say, well, the questions were brought up, well, how do we prove that? How do we prove that that's practical? What does practical mean to you? What does practical mean to me? And that makes me a little nervous about the bill to create something, to create a new inspector job or whatever that be. It's not delineated in the bill. I guess I feel like maybe it's a little bit vague. So I'm likely a no vote on the bill as well.
Anybody else want to make a statement? So, well, ladies and gentlemen, I look at this a little differently. I see these exemptions as being a great favor that the citizens of Wyoming are bestowing on these companies. And I think just maybe for these companies to sign a piece of paper that says they're doing their best they can to hire Wyoming workers. We owe that to the people that are paying for these tax exemptions that have to pay taxes in Wyoming. So I hope you will support it. I think it's also important we have a law in the books about registering vehicles, which the vehicle registration fees would go to support our schools in Wyoming and other property tax-based entities. And we don't seem to care to follow our own law about workers having to register their vehicles. So anyway, it's just a little bit of education, but anybody else want to make a statement? Welcome to. Let's call the roll.
On Senate File 37, Senator Baldwin. Senator James.
No.
Senator Pappas.
No.
Senator Schuler.
No.
Chairman Case.
Aye. I think that went rather well, actually. So I don't have anything else on our plate right away. If we get anything assigned from these individual bills that come in, we will schedule it probably Tuesday. We typically do numerical order unless there's a reason not to. So look for us on Tuesday. Thank you all very much. We're adjourned. Yeah,